the essential separation of these functions has got blurred. I'm telling you that the opportunities for new ideas to come in have got blocked. And you need new ideas. You really need new ideas. Here's a country where the exit rules are not clear, where if companies are not making, and that's not your problem. When I was in Bangladesh, I was advising the government of Bangladesh, and all the operators are coming and telling me, we are not making money, we are not making money. I said, if you're not making money, why don't you go? And they're telling me, we don't know how to go. What about all the investment that we have made? What about all the spectrum we have bought? How can we get rid of these things? We'll have to pay off all kinds of people because the rules are not clear. So why don't we have clear exit rules? Why don't we have clear rules about what happens to spectrum that you don't want to use? And why is it? Now you can say, I mean, I've said these things in Delhi before about need for road maps, need for refarming, need for clear exit rules. I've said all these things. I've written these as official submissions for your NTP when the NTP draft was being discussed, right? But my question now that I'm posing you is, maybe the reason that all these statements were said and by multiple people and not implemented has to do with the flaw in the overall institutional design. And that maybe this is the time to think about fixing the institutional design and really being honest about separating the operations, where you have a company that needs to be kept propped up with more and more money. That's what the entire Bharat broadband enterprise is about. It's about propping up BSNL. If you take all that money out, it doesn't really have a business case, right? And have a good, focused, specialized policy operation. And I will again tell you, this problem of getting a good policy operation in developing countries has not been solved anywhere, right? The policy competency, the skills, the capabilities that we need for that function cannot be done in the case of a generalized civil service where people keep getting rotated into telecommunications from textiles, from petroleum, from something else. Ravi will be here. Ask him where he's going next. It's not telecom, right? So there are many problems that not only India, but we, the entire region, all the developing countries share. But we need to solve them, because when India takes off, it's good for everybody. I'll just finish with that one little thing. I can remember I got a call from one of the regulators at that time. I was back in the US, I was teaching, and he said, Rohan, what do you think about limited mobility? I said, it's an oxymoron. Right? But they went ahead and did it. And by the way, you know what they did? They completely redefined the CDMA market for the entire world. And the CDMA unit prices came down, and I was finally able to get rid of the waiting list in Sri Lanka by giving low-cost CDMA access for the people who are wanting fixed phones. And I was happy that I was able to leave government with that achievement under my belt. We no longer had a waiting list. So, thank you very much. I hope I've been controversial enough. If you want, I can be more controversial. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan. I think you were more hard-hitting while Eric was more subtle in this handling of a problem that we all keep facing. And as I keep saying, it always starts with the intention that you have to fix the tariffs. And when you're fixing the tariffs, you think you're doing a very good job because you're being the god. You're being the regulator. And that's where the problem lies. Will we have 15 minutes? Okay. So I'll open the floor to all of you to ask questions. And we can take, it's 3:30 by my watch. It's actually 3:32. So 15 minutes. You can ask questions from anyone, sure. But if you just introduced yourself. Huh?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I'm Satyan Gupta. I'm now a freelancer. I'm ex-regulator, of course. My question is basically to you, actually. As you started in the beginning, beginning regarding that this overlap issue in the jurisdiction of the sector regulator and the General Competition Commission. And you mentioned, you gave a hint that how you can sort it out, that by defining the market. So my question is that who has to define the market? Either it is the sector regulator or the Competition Commission or the policy maker. That is one question. Or then I was thinking, like, why don't you do it other way around instead of solving the problem by defining the market, which can itself be a controversial thing and a issue, jurisdiction issue, as who will define. So why don't we can define what is called the jurisdiction itself? Why you cannot separate out the jurisdiction, or maybe something like that? If there is a sector regulator, let him do the job unless he feels the need to consult or refer the case to the Competition Commission. I think in UK they used to have that practice, like Ofcom, normally they had the full jurisdiction on the telecom, but if they feel it is beyond them, they will refer the case to Competition Commission. Why the same policy cannot be adopted here? Or you can have the Competition Commission as a surrogate kind of regulator for the sector which does not have its own regulator. So any idea on that?
You know, as an ex-regulator, you've really hit the point. But we are the last player in the field that has come in. So everyone feels they know the subject very well. And it's well established that the sectoral regulator would have a technical expertise, would do a little bit of tariff fixing right in the beginning, but they like to play God for a much longer time. And therefore, these are issues that have to be sorted out. Second thing is, I don't think we should define the market. You know, when you start defining, and as Subhashish said, you know, you say 50% of the market share and this is anti-competitive, that's where problems keep coming up. So even in terms of the Competition Commission, we don't define the market except in terms of the act. But in each situation, it becomes very different. But having said that, I think what the whole issue that has been coming out is a certain amount of a lack of openness and allowing for others to take on. The role of any regulator is within certain coordinates and certain parameters. And it is here we should also accept the fact that role of institutions like ICRIER comes in. And the government has to listen to academia, the academic institutions, and we have no lateral movements. My basic worry in the Competition Commission, which I've tried for 5 years, is to get the lateral movements. I think the US managed these lateral movements, maybe Sri Lanka did. Unless you have lateral movements, you'll never get new ideas.
Thank you.
Everyone wants to cup of tea?
I am K.R.G. Nair. I used to teach business economics in Delhi University. Since the Competition Commission representative, somebody who has some knowledge of TRAI and people with experience in many countries of the world are here, I have three small questions to ask. Firstly, and assuming that the Chatham House rule applies to this seminar also, have there been some? No, it doesn't, right. Now, whether it does or not, see, you say that there are different regulatory bodies. One is the Competition Commission, then we have the TRAI. Now, have there been instances when these have come in, at least there have been serious differences of opinion between the two? And if so, how were they sorted out? First question. If it is too embarrassing to answer, don't do so. Second question. I always thought that telecom revolution is the key to India's phenomenal economic growth the past decade, and also some amount of poverty removal in the last decade. Now, and I attributed it to our successfully working out. One is throwing the sector open. Liberalization did help. Secondly, liberalization did not lead to healthy competition. And there had to be some regulation. And I think this, I look upon the telecom sector as a success story of India evolving healthy regulation in a particular sector. I don't know whether the panelists agree with this. Then the last question is, our friend from Sri Lanka, who is based in the United States, pointed out that the regulator has also to encourage investment in the sector. I like that point. I wonder whether that can apply to India, because our framework is totally different. It is very difficult to have investment in a particular sector promoted by a regulator of that particular sector. I don't know how the panelists would react to this. Thank you.
Who would like to react?
Sure. It's not investment promotion in the conventional sense of going and having, doing road trips and making presentations to investors and so on. Though, when we had privatized our equivalent of BSNL in Sri Lanka, and we had 2 unsuccessful IPOs, initial public offerings. And one of the reasons why they were unsuccessful was that they said they didn't have a regulator they could point to. The regulator doesn't go and say invest, but the regulator gives the right signals about certainty, about impartial application of rules, not only says, but does, and has a track record to show for it. So that is the reason why, so when we looked at the 2 unsuccessful efforts at doing IPOs, and then the 3rd successful effort where the targets were met and the shares were divested, we can see that it was because of the difference in the regulatory environment. We even announced just before that we were going to take away their international monopoly. Because I said what is important is that we say it, not that we tell them, not that we leave ambiguity so that the investor may think there is a possibility of enjoying the international monopoly. But we said it, we stated it clearly. By this date, by date certain, this will be removed. So that is the function of the regulator's function. It's not to some extent it is stated in some legislation, but it's not an investment promotion function. For your second question, which was whether India is a success story, I believe so. I have said so in public. I'm very proud of what has been achieved. And I actually meet my colleagues from the late 90s, and I said, did we ever believe, Mr. Ramachandran, the number of other people I meet from those days, and I said, did we believe, did you think that we could achieve these results? And many of us, I personally didn't, that these results could be achieved. So I think it's a great success story. The question, of course, is then to build on that, because we have another wave of investment that is needed. We can't just coast. So in the same way that we did some serious rethinking about that first national telecom policy, the design of the first licenses and so on, and we reconfigured them in order to unleash this energy, I think we need to do that now. That is not to take away from the massive achievement of what has been done in this sector. I want to make that very clear. About different regulatory bodies and the conflicts between them, there have been plenty of conflicts between the Department of Telecommunications and the regulator, which have been resolved in various ways. There have been instances where the appellate body has overruled TRAI and so on, but your question was whether there has been a conflict between the competition body and the regulator, and I'm not to my knowledge.
It's been answered very well, no?
Yes. Do you have anything to add? You have some. They want to know what you think.
I know that.
They don't care about me.
They want to know from the horse's mouth.
Maybe I
Thank you for that really nice discussion. I had a question for Eric, and maybe Geeta or Rohan can also address it. How well do the informal channels of communications between the regulatory bodies work in the United States? I mean, how well, in the sense, how often do they meet? Is there any kind of needle of suspicion? Is it reported in the media? You know, how does, I mean, I'm thinking of a kind of adopting, it's a very good idea, adopting that in India, if regulators meet, if chairpersons of regulatory bodies meet, you know, over dinner or, you know, just informally. I'm wondering what would happen in the case of India. I know that when, you know, we used to work at the regulator, even the slightest visit, not by another regulatory body, but by a corporate, used to arouse a lot of suspicion amongst, you know, the stakeholders, what's happening, what policy is going to be influenced, and so on. But that's another issue. How well do these informal channels work in the American context or in any other country? And I wanted to ask Soshi the question about the market for ideas. And we had this discussion in the morning, and Sugandha had asked this question of Sam Petro. How would it get to kickstart this market for ideas, be it in telecom, be it in any other sector? Does it have these characteristics of public good which will need the government to get involved or kickstart this, or do you think it will evolve on its own? The reason I'm asking this is because Sam Petrota said in the morning that basically now we need a lot of applications, a lot of ideas to deliver all a host of services on this new medium. But this market for ideas really hasn't taken off. So to kickstart this market in India, what would it take? So these are my two questions.
Eric? So, first of all, I should say that in many other jurisdictions, there's a formal contract almost signed between the two regulatory bodies, where, for example, in Ireland, where there's a two-page document, basically signed by the Competition Authority and the sector regulator, where they say, this is how we're going to interact. This is here's the information we're going to exchange. Here's the limit to our exchange in terms of confidential information and so on. In Canada, it's interesting, they go one step further where they specify joint training. They specify actually interchange of staff so that the two bodies have this the same paradigm, the same philosophical approach, or it's more an assurance of that. In the United States, it's interesting that there isn't any description of what said what, when amongst these bodies. In fact, you'll see that there's some eyebrows raised. So the DOJ will refer to the fact, and the FCC will refer to the fact that they've been working closely, discussing these issues. But they'll never necessarily they won't necessarily specify what was discussed and how. And given the litigious nature of the U.S., I'm surprised that there hasn't been some issue emerging out of this. But I think there's a general appreciation by all parties. There's a general appreciation that it advances the process. It makes the whole mechanism work more efficiently. So there hasn't been any accusations or claims made that I know of.
Rohan wants to.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Rajat. I actually taught about regulation in the US. And when I came out and I started working in the developing countries, people thought, oh, he's going to bring American models. And I said, that's the last thing I would bring. Because the US is over-lawyered an overcomplicated and extraordinarily expensive procedure. I happen to like some of the outcomes more than, for example, the British telecom regulatory outcomes. But I simply say we just don't have the resources to do it in that complicated manner. Given that, and also being in government, knowing our people, knowing our cultures, I've been very cautious about allowing these people to, I mean, you know, we are very turf sensitive. I mean, that is a, my junior staff would get on my case if they saw I was giving away something that belonged to my organization. You know, we are really territorial in this regard. So when I was given the job of setting up the Public Utilities Commission, which was a multi-sector regulatory agency for the hard infrastructure, electricity, oil and gas, and things like that, we actually put in language which said that they will have to coordinate with the authority responsible for competition through an MOU, the kind of document that you talked about. We didn't put it inside the act. We said let them work it out. But we said it's a shall. You have to do it. And we also specified that when it came to market